All right, traders, good afternoon. Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Thursday, February 24th. Huge day of movement today in prices. A lot of obviously macro events, geopolitical events going on too. Always a little bit tough to kind of get a grasp on how things are going to shake out. And a lot of just watching the price action and looking for, not only, the price action, which in my opinion is number one and will always be correct, in terms of, giving you the answers that you're looking for. But I think also, looking outside of, some of the price action in the indices and some of the single names, also looking at some indicators too, watching what the VIX was doing today, watching what gold did today, right? So we're going to go through some of those moves. It's always, I'm going to say it's always, because this was a very distinct day, much different than some of the other days that we've had. But this year has been highly unusual in terms of things that we've been seeing. Very different than what we've seen in the last couple of years. Sorry, let me just lower my volume here. And and there's a lot of takeaways. And one of the things that I've been saying when this type of price action occurs is one day is not a trend, right? So we'll have to see if this is kind of the start of a bounce in the market. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about first the price action in the S&P, right? So a couple things, and I think that if you start with the weekly chart, and this is what I went over yesterday. We talked about the 80% rule. I got a couple questions about that. I posted, that the 80% rule is playing out in terms of what we're seeing on the weekly chart. Right, and I described that in last night's video. That's basically, using the value areas and saying when you start a period outside of value, whether it's above value or below value, right? And then you firmly establish yourself inside value. So in this case, we started the year above value, right? And we did firmly establish ourselves inside value. And what we've got now is we're kind of going through the whole value area. Did we get close to the 80% rule being complete? Pretty darn near close. I mean, I don't know. I think the low of the day was somewhere around, I guess, 4,100. I don't know, to be honest, if this classifies as the 80% rule being complete. Right, you could see that on the top of my screen. You could see the 80% rule. But even if we don't know, we definitely have some levels to watch. Note that we did take out, and we were talking about this, in the trading room as we were kind of having a discussion about this, right around. Sorry, let me just turn the labels on. Right around like 11 o'clock last night, we were talking about, how many levels were being taken out, and one of which was a virgin point of control, right? I thought that, when we came down and took this off, and this was a good, very good balance off of that, that we left this one behind. And I was wondering if this was going to be taken out. Well, it was taken out, and it was taken out in the overnight session last night. So what I would watch, right? So as we talked about this in here, and if you've been a viewer of my videos, it's the same process, right, of watching for these things to kind of change. So you have to start somewhere, and today was pretty good, right? The breadth got better. Here was the advancing versus the declining for the day. Right, so you had in the Dow, you had 11 advancers, 19 decliners. In the S&P, you had which is a bigger universe of companies, you had 319 advancers versus 185 decliners. You have 1964 advancers versus 915 decliners. By the way, the video that we're going, sorry, it's been a long day. Everything that we're talking about is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Please read the whole risk disclaimer there. And so yes, so number one, I would like to see us get back inside value for the month of February. We only have a couple more days of February, but still, I would like to see us get back above 42.78. Also, what I always talk about is when we're trending, right? I would like to see us at first get back above the 5-period moving average, right? So this is going to be a, this is going to be a process for this to happen. But, perhaps that we could build off of this. I'm usually pretty optimistic when I see, a candle like we saw, but you could look, right? We had this marvelous day back on 124. And it took a while for us to kind of carve this bottom out and get back above, so it took 1-2 of crazy back and forth price action. Remember this back in, back towards the end of January. It took 1, 2, 3, 4 days before we actually got back above that, right? And then the rally was basically, just to kind of rehash things, was a little bit of end of month flows and beginning of month flows, and then there wasn't really much follow through. So does this shake enough trees out? It could, right? And that's the $1 million question. Everybody wants to know if there's going to be follow through, or if this was just, just a lot of short covering for the day. And I don't know that, but I'm going to go through a couple names that we can that I'm looking at, right, to see if that's the case, right? But again, you're just not going to be able to find that for certainty on the day like we had. Was it a great trading day? Absolutely, right? And I'll tell you what has been working in this market is realizing that this has been a huge day traders market, right? If you're trying to swing trade this market, I would say, be mindful that I think right now, the more positions that you have on, the more problems that you have. It's been very difficult to get this market right day in and day out. I'm going to get to some of those other things too, but I want to finish the summary of the indices just to kind of give you a sense. Also, right, this NASDAQ had a huge day today, right? So finally, we saw some buying in some really beaten up areas of the market, and again, it's difficult to know when the day that this is going to happen. I came in yesterday morning and I was saying, hey, we're getting pretty oversold. I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be today or another day. And I certainly wasn't right about yesterday, but I just thought that a rebound, you can only go down in a straight line for so long before it should be enticing some buyers to come out. So yeah, so same, so similar. We're not above the 5-period moving average, but we have a downside VPOC being taken out. But I don't know really if we're out of the woods here. We did not complete the 80% rule yet. So that could be played out. And again, it doesn't have to be, we could definitely bounce for a couple days, right? So again, you have to be open to all possibilities. We could come up and we could rally and get up to like 14,355, or if you want a level in the Qs, and then we could fade, right? Or that would be 348 in the Qs, right? And then that bounce might be over with. Right. So, it's important right now if you're positioning in things, right, to be taking targets in things. That's what's worked. Right. And then in your trading account, if you want to leave the last piece of a trade on, that's the way to basically do it. So IWM, this I thought was really telling, right? Even though, right, this pattern is not good, right? When you break the range like this, right? And I think everybody was kind of saying at some point this bounce is going to stall and we're going to go back to the lows. Well, going back to the S&P or the NASDAQ, right, chart, we did go lower than the end of January lows. What's different here is IWM didn't do that. Right? I pointed that out like at 9 o'clock this morning. I said, I said, isn't that odd, right? That as bad as the small cap overall chart is, right? We really didn't, I guess we did just barely, right? Basically taking out the lows here, but really interesting that they actually ended up stronger, right? And we talked about that a week ago too, that the small caps were acting a little bit better than the overall market. It could be a valuation metric that was brought up to me today, which could make sense that the small caps are maybe not that expensive relative to some of, for example, high growth. Nevertheless, I would be watching this 199.61 level for tomorrow. And we'll see if this can bounce a little bit further, right? But again, there's not really much confirmation other than, a really, really nice bounce today. And, going back to the S&P, let's see if we can gain some traction from that. Now that we know more of what is going on with Russia. Do we know everything? No, we certainly don't. So here's what I thought was also, which was very interesting. Gold, right? You gotta be very careful about, like, I've been positioned long in gold and have had some things on in gold, including Newmont Mining, but you just can't take, you can't go out and, in my opinion, well, I guess you can, people do it, but you got to be really humble in what you're doing. Like, even if you've got a really nice trade in this market, gold is such a tricky market. It does this all the time. So, we talked about how clean this was, kind of coming out of value on the weekly chart, but gold is going to trade on geopolitical tensions, and, just like anything else, you got to be a seller into some strength, right? And then because if you're wrong on the balance, and if you on the trade, and if something like this backs up on you, at least you lock something in for profits, right? Because we don't have, no one has a crystal ball. Everyone likes to make predictions, but so I thought that was pretty telling, and it's going to look different when you look at GLD. I mean, look at the candle in GLD. That's a very ugly looking candle. However, on the positive side, like if you're still holding some gold, and I am too in the TTG trend portfolio, I did not take it out today. It's still holding the trend, right? So even though that's all the way up to 182.60, and closing at 177, it's still only down 65 basis points for the day. So really not that big of a deal. All right. So I thought that was telling. Look at the volume too in GLD. Right. So again, always gold to me is one of the trickiest things out there. Looking at bonds too. Notice where bonds rallied up to. We talked about this pre-market. We got all the way up to the top of value on the daily chart, and we got up to the bottom of value on the weekly chart. Right, so that rally kind of stalled out there. All right. Another thing that I thought was particularly interesting today was the VIX. We did go, we never really got to a level that was higher. I'm sorry, I'm on the weekly chart. Right, we never got as high as the level that we saw back at the end of January, and look at where we closed. So again, we're still holding the trend here. Right, but it was brought to my attention. It was a great observation that the VVIX today was kind of just leaking all day long. So these are things like, if you're a little bit more bullish, these are some pretty good things. But it's just could be the start of what we want to see, right? And we need to see follow through. Right, and that's the main thing. Something else that I was watching in the middle of the day, which I didn't see, I actually did not look at it. I like to look at credit spreads, right, to see if we've got really some dangerous stuff going on. Note, at one point I looked at this and I said, it's been the highest level that it's been since since basically back at the end of November, when we saw a spike in credit spreads. But look at where we finished for the day. Right. So again, we're kind of backing off from that. And, so what's the conclusion of the macro analysis in here? It's to basically say, continue to trade lightly in terms of positioning, and to kind of just wait for things to materialize a little bit more, to be patient, right? And wait for things, realizing that you don't have to pick the absolute bottom, right? If you're new to trading, right, you will find that everybody tries to do that, right? And I'm not picking on anybody being a newer trader, but if you're a little bit more experienced, you get used to being, trying to be a little bit more patient and realizing that you're not going to be able to time everything perfect. Newer traders try to time the absolute bottom all the time, right? I would say, if this trend is changing, right, you're going to have plenty of opportunities, right? All right, so I wanted to go over so a couple other things too that really stood out to me is what some of the defensives, because I've been in the defenses, but like a Philip Morris. Now I heard that there was a story that Russia is a decent customer of some of these companies' products, and maybe that had something to do with it. But I just thought it was really telling that that it looked like there was profit taking in some of these longs, and I think rotation into some of these other areas. So going back to my table here, it's amazing, the performance, right? I mean, it is nothing short of amazing seeing something like this. This solar ETF rallied 15% from the open. Clean energy, which you could put in that bucket. Somebody mentioned to me that I don't have cyber names in here, which also had a big day. We'll look at that chart in just a minute. But biotech was up 4.5% for the day. Software was up 6% for the day. That's a 10% move from the open to the close. So just monster moves, right? You could come up with more adjectives probably than I can for some of these moves. The ARC funds were up 14% from the open. Talk about a group that's gotten pretty oversold, right? So yeah, why don't we start with one of these cyber stock charts, right? So the problem is, and I was listening to, oh boy, who was this technical analyst? I always forget people's names at this point in the day. I will think of, he was on CNBC. Should write this stuff down, but he was saying that some of these charts are just so broken, right, that it's going to take a while to repair some of these charts. What I'm seeing right now is a lot of this, right? If we go back to the IWM chart, right, it kind of looks like a double bottom, right? So it's a potential area, right? And if you don't want that confirmation, right, that whether or not we've bottomed, just use a stop in all your trades, you know, and you have to be disciplined about it, right? If we do start to fall back, you know, you take the trade off. It's just trading, right? Instead of trying to figure out for sure if the bottom is in. But Chris Ferrone, by the way, is who I was thinking of, great technical analyst. And it was just saying that even if some of these things could rally another 10% and they still wouldn't be above trend, right? Or they could still get to like the 200-day moving average and fail, right? So I'm watching. So what I generally use ETFs for is to look how the group is behaving. And then I look in the group for the outperformers, names that I would probably want to hold, right? So I think the cyber ETF is pretty interesting. Could be putting in a W pattern. Again, just too early to know that. But, you know, I like what Palo Alto did today, right? Crazy move yesterday, crazier move today, right? Up 13%, right? And you know, if you think, oh, geez, you know, I missed a 13% move today in the stock, right? If you're really positioning for a swing trade, right, that just may be the start of a move, right? So I'm watching this one tomorrow. This one, and again, I don't think it's as cheap as, it's not a cheap company, but I don't think it's as expensive as some of the other names, you know, in the same group. So I'm really interested in Palo Alto. I did not put a position on, you know, but I'll be watching it tomorrow. You know, even like a CrowdStrike, I think the CEO is on a little bit later, but I got to see the price get above the 50-day moving average. Notice it closed right there. So again, and again, don't discount what this market is giving you right now. It's giving you a lot of really good day trades. I love the candle today on Datadog. I actually made a mistake. Usually when I make a mistake, it hurts me bad. But I did not take off a trade that went through a stop price yesterday. Shame on me for doing that. But every once in a while, you get a little bit lucky, and this thing traded back to where it was. I still need to see this thing get back above 162. But for now, it's above my original stop, so I stayed in it, and I do like the candle on the daily chart. Another name that was interesting that I thought was due for a ripper of a move, I just guessed the wrong day, was Salesforce. Again, Salesforce, you know, it's in a downtrend. You know, and maybe it can rally a little bit further, 210, maybe 216, but I thought this was due for a move. Note that this name reports, I think, on March 1st, as I just highlighted. Just quickly, a couple other groups and some things that I'm going to be watching into tomorrow. Look at the clean energy group, had a monster day. This is international clean energy. Again, when I break it apart, I'm looking at names like ENPH that had good earnings. Again, really nice candle for the day, but still just lodged all the way back into here. So not something I bought today, but something I'll be watching. A couple other names, one that recently reported, Airbnb, saw some call activity today. A flat 200-day moving average candle, but it's a name I'll be watching. It was a nice trade that we talked about that set up for a day trade in the room. Right, look at the 5-minute bar for the day, made it. So here's a good example. The 80% rule started below value, actually made it just about all the way through the value area. So that 80% rule is complete. Another name that I'm watching is Live Nation. Had good earnings, but got faded. Here's a level to watch for Live Nation to see if this thing can kind of start to trend again. Right? I do really like the reopening theme. People want to be doing things right now. 123.60, right, which is just a little bit lower. That would be a level that I would trade against. If it falls back inside value, and if the new value area, if I'm looking ahead to March here a little bit, is going to be 121, maybe that's where I would set my stop price, right around 121. All right, guys, so that's it. I'm going to keep the video. I'll stop the video here because I probably need to get a drink of water. And, just a crazy trading day. I do want to say in this video, I hope that anybody who's from Ukraine or has relatives there, I hope they are safe. That's the bottom line. Of course, my job is to talk about the markets and talk about trading opportunities. So if I seem insensitive, I'm just doing my job, concentrating on the market. But I do hope everybody is safe and, can stay that way. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.